Hi guys, welcome to our coffee times to discuss books and horror, and today I'm here to talk to you about all the books that I managed to read in the month of February.
It's coffee time!
So even though February was a short month in comparison, we only had 29 days, so it was a leap year. Basically, I was able to read 11 things. Some of them are not that long, but nevertheless, I'm gonna take this as a win and I'm gonna feel really proud about me reading 11 things in the month of February. I think March and April are gonna be busier months for me, so hopefully I still manage to read as much, but nevertheless, I am here today to talk to you about all of those things that I managed to read in February. If you're new here, we like to rate our books with coffee mugs, and also I start with the lowest rating so that we always end up at the end on a positive note. Let's start with Quilty As Charged by Maggie Bailey. I got this one off from NetGalley because I had already finished my whole TBR for the month of February, and I thought maybe I can squeeze in one more book, and I want it to be something that is very relaxed, that it's very like chill, and this is part of a series of these kind of like cozy murder mysteries. I enjoy these ones. They are very simple though. They have always like dogs and cats in the covers which, not gonna lie, it helps me, gravitate towards them. And these are basically, yeah, they're just cozy mysteries. In the book, we follow Lydia. She is the new owner of Measure Store, which is a fabric store, and she is struggling a little bit financially after she took over the store. It is obviously about all things sewing and crafts like that, and she decides maybe it will be cool to make a retreat and take some of her best customers to friends like house mountain log kind of thing, and she decides to take some of her best customers there and do like a full weekend of activities, like sewing activities, and spend some time together and kind of turn it into a recurring thing that she can do from time to time to get some extra money and keep her customers happy at the same time. So they all get to this cherry log mountain home together, and they're ready for a weekend of activities and to disconnect a little bit from the real world. So they decided to keep all their phones at home and not take them here in order to avoid, being stuck to their phones for the whole weekend, and it kind of defeats then the purpose of this retreat. So that is a little bit unrealistic in my opinion already, because who would go to this place and nobody has a phone, nobody has a watch in order to know what time it is, what day it is? I don't know, it's just a little bit unrealistic for me. But anyway, we are in disbelief. We get to the place, and one of the people that are in this house is murdered. On top of that, they are stranded because there is a heavy storm at the moment. They are left without electricity, and there is obviously no way to call for help because they don't have their phones with them. And so they are stranded there until the storm passes and somebody has been murdered, and they have to figure out who murdered the person before somebody else gets hurt. And of course it puts them in an uncomfortable position because they actually know each other, and so they know that the murderer is somebody probably that they know, unless a stranger managed to get in and out. But with the storm, maybe a little bit more unlikely. So I enjoyed the book all in all. I thought the characters were very enjoyable. There were different types of characters, and the author took the time to kind of give them a little bit of background so that we would understand where the characters were coming from. But of course, all the characters are keeping secrets, and we are informed of some of those secrets here and there so that we can try to figure out who has the motive and who had the opportunity to, do the killing. And yeah, the only thing is that I was not as thrilled and excited about the murder mystery as I had hoped. It is a book that does, have that kind of small town, kind of like, group of friends secret kind of vibe, and the atmosphere in this house in the middle of the mountains. It was nice, but I was a little bit dissatisfied when it comes to the actual murder mystery. But all in all, it was, just a cozy murder mystery, which is what I was looking for. So if you like this type of books, then you can pick it up. Who Hounds You by Mark Wheaton. This is YA Paranormal, and I read this one on my Kindle, and I have to say I did really enjoy the overall story and our main character here. Rebecca is a high school senior trying to make it to graduation. She's also autistic, and there were a lot of bits in the book where the author is trying to, explain how an autistic person would see things differently that for us feel really normal and things that we just take for granted, which I really appreciated. And I also appreciated that the author did mention that there are different types of autism and it's not just one and everybody, gets affected the same way. Then a student dies in an accident, but Rebecca starts to question if it was actually an accident or if something else happened to that student. And as she starts investigating what happened, somebody else gets killed, another student. And it seems to Rebecca that the deaths might even be connected to each other. She's the only one apparently that's putting the dots together and that is realizing that there is something going on here with the students. And she's the one that is going to, have to save the day in order for people to stop dying, especially before it gets to her, because she's also a student. The book was quick and entertaining, and I really enjoyed Rebecca as a character and to see how she was coming out of her shell as we were moving forward with the book. It is a creepy, paranormal, supernatural story for YA readers. I would say is more in the lower end of YA than in the higher end. So there's nothing really like bloody, gory or anything like that. In here is more of a supernatural tale, but I really did enjoy the investigation part of it as well. Next we have The Boy Next Door by R.L. Stine, and for these Fear Street books that I read this month, since they are featured in my Valentine vlog, I'm not going to go into too much detail. I mean, these books, you kind of know what you're getting yourself into when you pick up a Fear Street book. There's going to be some drama, there's going to be some teenage angst, and there's going to be probably someone that dies in some mysterious circumstances. So this is about two girls that are really interested in their new neighbor, but the new neighbor Scott has a dark past. Basically, the girl he was dating died in mysterious circumstances, and now the two girls are trying to date him because everybody in this book apparently is trying to date him. Now everybody that's trying to date him might be in danger. So it was a fun mystery with a potential killer, the neighbor Scott, which is also kind of like a tropey thing to put the sexy neighbor as a killer. The only thing I was not so on board with was that I felt the women in the book, like the girls in the book, they were kind of a little bit bickering against each other, and they were, kind of criticizing what the other one was wearing. And that was like a big no-no for me, but that sometimes in Fear Street books, these things might come up and you kind of need to put them aside. It was another time, another decade. Things were a little bit different back in the day, but it's still not something that I love to see. Broken Hearts by R.L. Stine, and this is another Fear Street book that I read for my Valentine's vlog. So in this one we followed twin sisters, and one of the twins had an accident, and after that their lives changed forever. Now Josie is getting ready for spending Valentine's with her boyfriend, but then she starts to receive some mysterious letters in the mail. They are Valentine letters, but the things that the letters say are actually threatening to her, so she doesn't know who's sending these like anonymous letters, if it is like a secret admirer, somebody that's trying to hurt her. So that's what we have to figure out. This was an interesting, twisty murder mystery, and I enjoyed it. It also has kind of like a little bit of a stalker vibe because of the like anonymous letters. It has a little bit more interesting character depth than the other one, but still you need to remember this is a Fear Street book. It is though really fast paced, it is a fun time, and this one had a couple of twists and turns in the story, so that made it a little bit more engaging than the other one. So I really enjoyed it for what it was, like a Valentine murder mystery. Mother Knows Best, Tales of Homemade Horror, and this is a compilation of short horror stories as well as poetry that is going to come out, I believe, on the 7th of May, so you still have time, guys, to pre-order it if you would like to. Now, what made this short horror story compilation more unique is that we of course have poetry in between the short horror stories, which I love to see. I don't read much horror poetry, so it's nice to have that here as well. And all the stories are based around the relationship between mothers and daughters, but of course with a horror spin. There is a lot of horror here, but also some fantasy elements, and I feel like these are stories that especially females are gonna be able to relate a lot more to and see themselves represented, perhaps. It is about the fears, the disappointments, and everything, you know, around growing up and how our relationships with our parents, in this case specifically our mothers, might shape us or might destroy us. Like, it's not uplifting stories between parents and kids, but it was really enjoyable, and all the stories were so different from each other, which I also really enjoyed. The Cheater by Errol Stein, and this has been my favorite from the three Fear Street books that I read for my Valentine vlog, and I think it's because I felt like the mystery here was a lot better executed and it was more thrilling and it had like better tension overall. I think it offered also more than just teenage drama, because there is not just the relationship between our main character and her friends or boys. There's also the relationship between the main character and her parents, especially her dad, and I love to see that explored in depth in a Fear Street book. Carter needs to get a really high grade in her math exam, because otherwise she's not going to be able to make it into the college that she wants to. More than she wants to, kind of, she has no choice because her father expects that from her. So she's really scared because she knows she's not gonna get the grade that she needs. So in a moment of desperation, she takes the offer from one of her classmates that offers to take the test for her because he's really good at math, and the only thing that he asks in return is to have a date with Carter. Now, she decides to do it, and she goes on a date with him, and she thinks it's gonna be the end of it, but it seems that he's gonna want a lot more from her that she bargained for. Now, this book was really interesting because, like I said, it is a bit more kind of intricate, the murder mystery, than the other ones, and I thought that was really cool to see in a Fear Street book. And it's basically the book that had me more guessing and more kind of confused about who was going to be the responsible for all of these things at the end of the day. So this was the better murder mystery. I also really enjoy the characters here. I think Carter is such a well fleshed out character. You know, sometimes in these books the characters are a little bit more kind of like superficial, and I felt like I could really understand Carter and where she was coming from, especially, you know, the parents' pressure and making decisions that she regrets. She's embarrassed about the things that she's done, and there was a lot more, you know, from Carter as a character, and I really enjoyed it. So if you want to pick up a Fear Street book for next Valentine, or if you were considering to start the series of Fear Street, I can recommend you this one as one of my favorites. Horror Store by Grady Hendrix, and I was a little bit scared going into this book because for me Grady Hendrix is a little bit hit or miss, and the majority of times there are sections in his books that I adore and others that are not exactly my cup of tea. So it's always like a 50-50 thing for me with his books, but I always end up wanting to read all his new releases because there's something about his writing and his stories that still intrigues me. So this one I was scared to pick up because I know that Grady Hendrix loves to, you know, combine horror and humor, and I thought this was probably going to be one of the ones that has a lot more humor in it because of the presentation and the concept. So this is basically a ripoff of an IKEA store, and the workers that are working there are asked to stay overnight because they think something fishy is going on during the night. They have found like dirty things, they have found missing things, things move places, so they assume somebody or something comes at night and trashes the place, moves things around, steals from them, and they want to figure out who it is. So they decide to stay overnight, a handful of the workers, to try to see what actually goes on when the lights go off. And the story is so well kind of planned. The way that we go deeper and deeper into a rabbit hole with these characters is great. It was fantastic to see. I need to say though, it's not a book that is going to be for everybody because it is weird and awkward and bizarre. as you probably can expect from Grady Hendrix, but I enjoyed it more than I thought. I was really invested in the characters and their stories and the reasons why they were at the store, taking this extra shift at night, and I was really rooting for them. I love the design of the book. It has like the chapter split is great. Every time a chapter starts, you get like a furniture or something that is sold at the store, and it is kind of related to what's to come. And I absolutely love that. I love the format of the book. I thought it was a lot of fun, and I did not expect this book to be one of my favorites from Grady Hendrix because, like I said, he's always a hit or miss for me, and I did not expect a rip-off catalog of IKEA to be one of my favorites by him, but here we are. Europea Halls by Alan Shivers, and this is a slasher. I absolutely flew through this one, and it has been such a fun slasher. If you love your typical slashers from the 90s, you need to pick this one up. It's also a trilogy, so you can look forward to still book 2 and book 3, which I'm also gonna get. We are in a prestigious school in Brussels, and we follow a group of girlfriends that are staying there in the dorm, and they have their own kind of WhatsApp group to talk about everything, obviously. And then somebody infiltrates in that WhatsApp group and starts to send really weird messages to the girls, which, you know, wouldn't be too much of a concern. Maybe it's just somebody pranking them or whatever, but then one of them gets killed. And they realize that something very serious is going on, and they decide to go to the police. Now, the police is trying to protect these girls, but the killer is also on the loose. And so, as any good slasher, the killer is going to try to kill them all, and the police is going to have to try to stop it. So it was such a fun slasher. You're reading from the POV of the different girls, and I loved to see how things were developing and how each girl saw it from a different perspective. My only little criticism that I have is that at times the voices from the girls felt very similar, so it was not super easy to immediately kind of tell them apart. So that is the only thing that I would criticize from the book, but it's absolutely nothing major. I love the book. I had a lot of fun with it. I did predict some stuff, but you know, I'm just gonna assume that it's because I've read a lot of these kind of slashers books, so it might be just me. But it is a lot of fun to try to figure out who is the killer or who is responsible for these killings. This Wretched Valley by Jenny Kiefer, and this is another one that I'm not gonna go into too much detail because I do have a book review coming up at the end of the week, so I'm gonna be talking a lot more in depth about the book. But I was surprised because my brain, it is my own fault. My brain assumed that by this cover and the story, I just assumed this was YA. And I started reading it and I realized this is getting very intense. The gore is getting out of hand. And I was like, these cannot be YA. It is not. It is adult. My fault. So this is such a good debut novel. It is also the debut by the author, and I am so excited to see what she's gonna do next because this is such a good survival horror story, and we don't get too many survival horror stories. At least I have not read that many myself. I feel like the horror market is really saturated with like slashers or paranormal, haunted houses stories, but there is not as many survival horror books that are based inside of woods or forest or like these kind of places. So I was really glad that I picked this one up, and we read it actually together with my Patreons. You can join us. The link is down below. We read a book a month that we all choose together, and this was such a good pick. So also thank you to my Patreons that voted for this one because that was the right choice. It was great. We follow 2 climbers and 2 researchers that are determined to make a new discovery. So they have by now discovered a new rock in the middle of the woods that nobody has climbed before. So they're really excited Dylan is one of our main characters, and she is the one that is going to climb the rock and post everything on her social media, and she's really excited about it. But on the way to the woods, they make a pit stop at a diner, and they are warned by the locals that those woods are dangerous. People that go in either never come out again, or they come out but they are forever changed. But our 20-somethings decide that this is probably just a local legend, that there is no truth to it, and this rock is too important for them to just give up and not go in now that they have all the equipment with them and they are ready. So they go in, 4 20-somethings and a dog, and they all go into the woods. The moment that they start walking in, they realize that this place seems to be a little bit weird, and it doesn't seem like people have been here for a very long time, but they keep pushing, they keep walking, they find the rock, they're super happy, and they build their camp, and they are ready to proceed with the climbing. But of course, the place, as they were warned, is cursed. There's something wrong with this place. And I'm not going to go into too much detail because I don't want to spoil the enjoyment of finding out what's going on, but I would say this is a book that automatically reminded me of The Ruins. I kept having like flashes, especially of the movie, in my head when I was reading this, so if you enjoy that, you definitely have to pick this one up. It is a book that had amazing atmosphere. The woods became their own character. It is a book that has a little bit of annihilation in it, I would say. But it is also a book that is very intense. There is a lot of gore, a lot of description of body horror, so keep that in mind if that's not for you. But I absolutely love those parts. They were so gruesome, and it is a very interesting story because the book starts telling you that 3 bodies were recovered, and the 4th one, it was never found, so they don't know if that person survived or not. So when you go into the story, you know that 3 of them are gonna be dead, but you still feel like you have to root for them, which just gives to show you how good the author's writing is, because you want those characters to survive, even though from page 1 you know that for sure 3 out of 4 are gonna be dead. So if you love survival horror, if you love The Ruins, The Ritual, all of those kind of stories, this is a book for you. Fresh Hell by Cameron Channey. This is the first book on the Autumn Cry High series, and I am so excited. I read this one basically in one day. During some reading sprints, I just sat down and I read the whole thing because I was so excited and I could not put it down, which is kind of what I was anticipating because I had read Autumn Crow before and other short horror stories by Cameron, and so I kind of knew his writing style and what I could expect. Autumn Crow is a place where people die or disappear in mysterious circumstances, and people just accept it. They don't really try to figure out what happened because, you know, happens a lot. Which is something, you know, that most people would be concerned about, but in this place they just accept it. It's part of you know, the place and part of what makes Autumn Crow Autumn Crow. And one of my favorite things about this book is that we got a little bit of backstory on how Autumn Crow was built and about Abraham and Autumn Crow, the couple that were the founders of the town. I love that, and I kind of wish I would get like a separate book just on those 2 characters because they were so interesting to me. This book is gonna have amazing 90s nostalgia for all of you that love that and love 90s horror. It's very reminiscent to Fear Street and Errol Stein's writing, but for me this is more like modern and a lot better. I think the characters are much better in Cameron's stories, and I ate it up. I ate it up and I read it, like I said, in just one day. Our main character Bailey is plagued by nightmares, and she doesn't know why she's getting these nightmares, but in all her nightmares there are certain things that happen over and over again, and she also sees one specific boy in her nightmares, and it is a boy that she's never seen before. But then when classes restart and she goes back to high school, one of the new students is a boy that looks exactly like the boy in her dreams. She doesn't know what to do. She doesn't know if she should tell him. She doesn't know if it's connected or not. But she's starting to get really worried. As people start getting hurt, Bailey is determined to get to the bottom of things and find out if her nightmares and this boy are related to, you know, the people getting hurt, disappearing, all of that. But of course, the more she investigates, the more things she's gonna discover that maybe she was not ready for. It was a really fast-paced, entertaining book, full of action, full of things going on. I really enjoyed the characters, and I just cannot wait to know more about this place. Why there's always some sort of evil in this place. And I would still love to know more, like I said, about the background and the founders of the town. I would love that. There is really good horror. This is a YA book, but I would put it on the higher end of YA because there is some blood, gore, like intense moments, intense deaths. Quite gruesome for a YA, so I would say it is on the higher spectrum, which of course I also love. And I love that Cameron is giving us like a more fresh take on horror and his own vision in this new town, in this new universe. And I'm here for it. I want to know more about this universe. I want to know more about Autumn Crow. So I'm really excited for whenever he's ready to release the next book. Good Girl, Bad Blood by Holly Jackson. And I really enjoyed this book. It is not easy to write a sequel after you have had such a success with a book. But I feel like this book kept the essence of Pip and just gave us another different story. In the first book, we follow Pip, and there was a murder case in her town that was closed, and somebody was charged with a murder, and the case was closed. But she is unsure if the person that was found guilty was actually the murderer or not, or maybe the murderer is still somewhere, you know, free. And so she decides to get to the bottom of things and try to figure out if the guy that was accused actually did the murder or not. And of course she starts investigating. There's like interviews and she reads police reports, and she gets herself in trouble because she is kind of putting her nose where, you know, she shouldn't. And I really love that first book, like the way that Holly Jackson created that kind of murder investigation. It was just fantastic for people that love, you know, reading through interviews and police reports and diary entries and things like that. If you love that, you're gonna love book one. In the second book, Pip is investigating the disappearance of a boy named Jamie, and she wants to find him before it's too late. She doesn't know if he's dead or alive, but she is determined to find him since the police doesn't seem to be doing what they're supposed to do, again, as in book one. So she takes matters into her own hands and starts investigating. This one, when it comes to the mixed media, has a lot of podcasts because after the first book, she decided to start her own podcast about unsolved murders, you know, using the platform that she has to reach to a lot of people and maybe try to solve other murders and other disappearances. And so she has a podcast now, and we see her podcast entries. She's still interviewing people, so we still get that we had in the first book. And I thought this book was very engaging. It kept me guessing, it kept me intrigued. I think the ending was good. It was a bit different from what I had expected or anticipated, but it doesn't mean that it was bad. And it was quite intense for Pip as a character and for YA readers. So I would also say that when it comes to Holly Jackson, her YA books are more on the higher end because they can get quite intense. And these were all the books that I managed to read in the month of February. I hope that you enjoyed the video. Let me know down below if you have read any of these books. And also let me know what is the best book that you read in the month of February. Let's talk about it in the comments. Thank you guys as always so much for watching, and I hope to see you all in our next coffee time. Bye!